It's Katie. So earlier I did a tutorial, it's uploading right now, on the bargello technique, and out of one Skinner blend I made 5 different veneers. So here's one, here's another, that's another 2, and then that one down there. So I'm going to pick one of these to make a pendant out of. I just have it in a sheet protector that I cut down the side. I've had a lot of my clay in the sheet protectors for a while that I bought off Amazon. They seem to be fine. So I just cut them down the side for easier access, and then I have all my clay in a 3-ring binder. So I started the other day making a pendant, and when I'm not super in love with it, but a lot of people said they really liked it, but I'm going to modify it. So I'm not going to do that tutorial. I'm going to kind of do something similar. So these were the ones I started the other day, and I just don't think they quite go together. This one's fine because it's just that veneer, but these I don't think they quite go together. So I'm going to use what everybody's calling a lace cane. I'm going to use this cane, but I need to put something on the other side. So on top or below that lace cane, what I need to do is get some clay. So I'm going to use the scraps from the bargello that I had. I have some scraps from this Skinner blend cane I made the other day, so I'm going to use that, and then I just had some blue, and we're going to swirl it up and use it as our background. This is a great way to use your cane scraps. I want more of the blue, so I'm trying to shave off any of that's solid, or the blue-green color. Okay, it's okay that it has some translucent in it, and then what I'll do is I don't need tons of it, because it's only going to be one side of my pendant, but we need to be able to cut out a full pendant from it. So always keep those scraps, because you can do a lot of things with scraps, and actually quite a bit of my tutorials use scrap colors. So I'm just chopping it up a little bit just to get it kind of more evenly, or I'll be able to more evenly mix it. Toss it around. Get some of this aqua over here, some of the blue over there. Okay, and then we're just going to ball it up. And I tend to make 2-sided pendants, and a lot of people do. It's nothing new. So I just tend to make 2-sided pendants, just what I like, and what a lot of people do. So all I'm going to do is just roll this into a ball here, and then I'm going to pick an area, kind of like this area here. Yeah, I'll pick that area. And the next thing I'm going to do is roll this up into like a lentil bead. And the easiest way to do that, let me find the part I liked, maybe there. How do I keep flattening it out? So you take an acrylic block, and all you're going to do is a circle in one direction. And this will begin pulling your clay to start swirling it. Now you're not going to see much of it behind my translucent cane, but you'll see some of it. So you're just going to go around in a circle, and what it'll do is it'll begin pulling the clay in the center. And if you do this and you go, well, that color's not enough for me, you might want to just take it, chop it up again, and remix it and do the same thing. See, there's more green in the center, and I want more green on the outside. Not tons of green, but green. And I have some scrap green here. I might just take a little of that and mix it in. It's not really scrap. I mean, it's a great color. Not quite enough to do a cane with, so I might as well use it in something like this. I just have a scrap box of clay sitting there. I'll kind of just mix it all in. I don't want any solid chunks, so I'm just going to mix it all in. I'll probably chop it up again. I want some nice light swirls of coloring. that you'll see behind that pendant. Okay, that should be enough now. Form it back into a ball. Roll it up. Pick an area you like. Kind of like that area right there. And swirl. And there's tons of tutorials, as I've said before, on lentil beads. I use this technique a lot for using my scrap clay on backings. I hate to use pure clay on backings when I do backings. So I use this technique a lot. I use it under my translucent canes a lot, just to get the colors mixed. I know my thing's getting a little wonky, but that's okay. It's still pulling the clay into a swirl. And the longer you do this, the more of a swirl you'll get in the middle there. Now, the swirl doesn't really matter to me. I'm just trying to drag the clay in a direction, in one direction or another. And that's what I did under this one, too. And you can see it kind of on the back of these guys. So then you got to pick a spot you want, and we'll begin flattening this out. And this is what will go under our cane. I'm going to roll it through my pasta machine on the same setting the same thickness my bargello's on. And maybe a little thinner because the cane slices are going to add a little bulk to this. So just like that. There's a little air bubble, so I'm just going to slice it. Push the air out right now. It's good practice to start getting rid of your air bubbles when you see them. So that will be underneath my cane, and that will be the back side. It just has to be big enough to cut your pendant out of. So we have that. So let me grab my cane. I'll be right back. This is my cane I made, and it's a really simple cane. I have a tutorial on this if you're interested in how to make this kind of lacy look. And it will come out different every time, depending on what you use, but it's just simple white and translucent. A lady the other day on my Facebook page, Katie's Polymer Clay Friends, she posted a picture that inspired her, so we're going to each make something based off of that, and we're going to see how both of us interpret it. So we were just talking about on that page maybe doing a monthly or a weekly thing where someone posts a picture. I see all the time people post pictures and go, God, I'd like to make a cane, inspired by this. So, whether it's architecture, art, nature, other works of polymer clay, I'm thinking we'll take a picture and then people make a project based on that, whether it's a pendant, a cane, a bowl, a tray, or whatever they want to make. And then we all see how we all interpret it to see, because we all see things differently. So she's going to make a colored one. I'm going to make a translucent one. If you want to see the picture, go ahead and join my Facebook page. It's Katie's Polymer Clay Friends. And if you make anything too, I'd love to see it. So post it there. That's a great way for me to be able to see what you did with my tutorial and how you interpreted it and where you went from there. There's all kinds of ways you can take this basic stuff and edit my design. And that's what I want you to do. Most of the time, it's like, don't copy it exactly. Even you totally can, but modify it. That's so much fun when you modify it. And I love to see what people come up with because there's millions of ways to do one simple thing. As my bargello video is going to show, it's like one Skinner blend and many, many ways with the basic bargello technique to come up with so many different ideas. So anyways, I'm going to begin slicing this into as thin as you possibly can slices. And the main thing with cutting slices and layering them onto a piece like this to get a pattern is it honestly doesn't matter. Yes, if it's translucent and you want to see the backing, the thinner the better. But if you're just layering canes to make like a veneer, just having them all equal in slice. So whether they're all this thick or they're all this thick or they're all this thick, it doesn't matter as long as they're all equal. And that way when you burnish them, they'll all burnish together evenly. So I'm going to try to roughly cut them the same thickness. You know, no one's perfect at this, doing this by hand. That's for sure. Don't throw away these ones with the little jaggedy edges. Definitely keep those, because you'll see in a second that we'll use those. Those will go around the edges. The perfect slices will go more in the middle. I mean, I wish I had a Lucy clay slicer, but they're really expensive, so I can't afford that. I get $1,200 a month in student loans. There's no way I could afford that right now. Someday, maybe. But it's too hard to fathom spending $200 on a slicer. Even the mini slicer is like $100. And I'll show you why I'm messing with my cane after each slice. So I'm rotating it after each slice, but I'm also, I'll show you in a sec. Let me cut this one, I'll show you what I'm doing. So every time you cut, as you guys know, each slice is going to kind of, the corner's kind of bending in. So I'm just kind of pulling the design back square. Not that that will make a big difference, but I just want to stretch it out a little bit again. So I'll get a few more slices. Just like that. And this one pendant's going to make two. So to get a design, you know, we're going to cut right down the middle of it. So it won't really matter how you lay these on. So first let me get a cutter. And I think I'm going to just do my basic football shape. A lot of people have this shape. It's a nice shape to show a good amount of the design in. So maybe that shape, or do we really want to go with another shape? No, you know what, I want to go with this shape. I haven't done much of these lately. So I'll take this one here, and if I position it better, because the swirl won't be right in the middle, again, we're going to cut down through it, so I can get more if I do that. And I'm just going to score it a little bit, and then say I use another one for a different design. Let's just score that a little bit so I know where each cane's going to go, and then I can layer, or where each pendant is going to be, and then I can layer on there. Okay, so now I'm just going to begin layering them on. And I'm going to just, you know, this is a little cockeyed. Let me see if I can rotate this here. And I'm going to start in the middle. And I'll use this one. It got a little thicker, but I'll show you what you can do in a second. Now you have to be careful when you do it, but I'll show you how to do it. Mine as well, because some people are going to cut things thicker. It's just inevitable. It's harder to cut it small. I need my tissue blade, or my craft knife, because you can, when you're trying to lay them, you really don't want them overlapping like this, because it's a translucent cane. You want it translucent for a reason, but you also want to try to hide as much of the background clay as possible. So using your craft knife or something to stick it under there, you can kind of help it, guide it where it needs to go. So I'm just putting this corner with that corner. It makes like a flower pattern. And here's one with a bad edge. That's okay. We'll use this more on this end. Okay. And it's okay, there's a little gap there. I'll show what we can do in a second. I'm going to line this corner up with this corner. Okay, and then with these pieces right here, I'm going to cut them off. That one's not the greatest looking one because it's got a ragged edge, but the other ones are straight edges. So I can use them to fill in over here. To fill in right over here. Can get it to lay where I want it to lay. So I should use this edge, but it's got a piece of silver leaf on it. And then it's got a little piece of color. There we go. And I don't ever get rid of the little scraps either. I keep those and I marble those too in different pieces for scrap clay. Okay, so now we got it basically filled except for the center there. So I'm going to take a piece of this excess here, and it's mainly translucent in the center, so I want to see if I can find a spot of just translucent and kind of cut it out here. That way it doesn't really affect the pattern too much, but it covers the background. Okay, let's see how much of the background we can cover. So next thing we're going to do, take a piece of parchment, waxed, unwaxed, take a piece of plain printing paper, anything really, construction paper, and I begin flattening with my fingers first. That way if I feel some that are taller, I can smush those down first. The first thing I want to show you though is you see how some of these are taller than the other ones? You can do similar to what you do in a mica shift. You can bend your tissue blade and slice off the thicker part. Now you need to go really slow and very carefully unless you're good at this, so you don't slice down to your base color. But anything that's sticking up really high, you can just slice off like that. And these little pieces right here, so say I got a piece of scrap clay, they look really cool on scrap clay, rolled into a ball. So that's what like this looks like. If you keep these little pieces and cover them, well, that's a bigger ball. Let's use this big ball. And once you stretch that out, they look quite cool. So again, let's slice a little bit more, try to get them a little more evenly. So if you're not good at cutting your canes thin enough, that's a way you can try to fix it. Now again, don't ruin your piece by doing that and slicing right down through your cane. But as long as you go really slowly, have a nice thin sharp blade, you usually can get them a little bit more even. So I wanted to show you that. And if you get it a little thinner on a translucent cane, you'll be able to see more of your background. I'm just laying it on this scrap clay here. And that's a little thick right there. I want to be able to see through that a little better. You know, these slices are already thin to begin with, so you really do have to be gentle about it. And then when you feel like it's fairly even, it's pretty good right there. Let me cut off these excess ones here right now, and I'll put those on that bead. I'll show you what to do with that in a minute. We're going to burnish it. So like I said, by taking your paper, first I just push straight down because I don't want to distort the pattern by pushing it to the side or smearing it to the side. I'm just pushing kind of straight down. If you see any holes, like right in there, I can see some background clay through it, so I'm going to try to take the clay and gently work it into that spot. Now if I can't get it covered up, what I'll do is I'll take a piece of that I already had on the ball, and I'll just put a tiny little piece there, just so I don't have such a stark contrast between the background clay pushing up through and the translucent. Okay, so we're just kind of pushing down, trying to get it all to the even height right now. I'm sorry, that taps. And it's just stretching the pattern out a little bit. It's adhering it to the background. And then I'll take my roller and gently, I'd rather go many times gently than a couple times hard, because if you go one way too hard, it'll stretch your pattern. Just gently start rolling in all different directions. You can just take your roller and not even roll, just burnish it like this. So right now this is thinning a little bit more and stretching our pattern a little bit more, just very slightly stretching our pattern. And try not to roll off the edge of your pendant, because that edge will kind of bevel. So try to stop before you get to the edge. Okay. Right now, that's going to be one side of our pendant. Now I still see that background clay in that one spot that I just added, so I'm going to take another thin little layer, because that piece I added was crazy thin. Hang on, I dropped my blade. And I want to add that because I can still see some of that through it, so I'm just going to take another tiny little piece. Stick it on there and then burnish just that little spot. And again, that might screw up a pattern a little bit, but no one but you is going to notice. If you're really worried about that, do like what I did in the center here and just try to cut out a piece of translucent, or get a piece of translucent. Okay, so that's one part of our pendant. And that's going to be the back of it when we get there. Okay, now the other part, I'm going to use one of these bargellos. So let me set that aside. And because the scrap clay was mainly the bargello clay, a lot of it should go fairly well with the bargello. I just need to decide what one I want to use. I think this black one here is too much for that. This nice pale design. That one would look okay. That one I think is too much. That one would look kind of cool. See, with this one you get this like scattering in the middle here. You have solid color, stepping, solid color, stepping, and then this one is a blend as well. Now let me see if I can get one of these to fit. I can stretch it a little bit. I think I kind of want to use this one. But that might be cool for just on its own, like a bigger, maybe I'll use this one, this checkered bordered one. I'm going to use this one. Let's see what that one looks like. Why not? So, next what I'm going to do with this one is it needs to be stretched out a little bit. It's a little too small. Unless I went on a diagonal, but straight up and down it's a little too small. So what I'm going to do, and I burnished them a little bit when I made them, which you'll see in my tutorial, but I didn't burnish them a lot. Try to get a clean part of this. So what I'm going to do now with my roller, again, like I said, many times, just very gently, I'm going to begin squishing it and stretching it out. I don't want to run it through my pasta machine because my pasta machine is going to not give me the control I need. And this is really light clay, so it's okay if you get little things on it. We're going to be sanding. We know that's not down in the clay, it's right on top. And I'm going to be sanding this pendant because everything's solid clay. It's no like alcohol inks on the top or acrylic paint on the top, which is what I like about using solid clays. I don't have to worry about sanding off a pattern. That's what I have a hard time with, like stencils and stuff with stencils, because I can't really sand very much, and I really like to sand even though I use resin. Not that I like the process of sanding, I just like the way it looks better. Almost there. It's such a cool pattern, I think. It'd almost be cool to go vertically with it in that direction. Because this one I'm only going to get one of the patterns on it. Unless I do it like there. I don't think I'll be able to stretch it that far. It'd be really thin if I do that. Yeah, too thin. I wanted to show people a whole bunch of different techniques, so I didn't make big sheets of these. And you can feel with your fingers if you're getting uneven. The other thing I want to look at is I'm going to bring my other one up, and I want to make sure it's similarly thick. It's not too thick, not too thin. They're about the same thickness right now, so that's probably a perfect spot to stop. So let's see. I like this mint. This is Fimo. I like this Fimo mint a lot. So I think I want to use more of the Fimo mint. Yeah, that'll be enough. I just got to burnish the lines out a little bit more down here. And again, I'm not worried about these little pieces of hair and stuff all over. With two dogs, it's too hard for me to keep it clean. So I think maybe right there. So I'm going to cut the slice out of this. Okay, and I'm going to remove the excess. I want to try to keep this because this would be like a cool something, I don't know what, a stripe down the center to divide two. Okay, so let's see. No. Whatever. Scrap clay. Everything's too stuck. And I'm working on a matte tile mainly because my light reflects, and it makes it a little harder to pick things up because it's got like a, it's not fully textured, but it's not like a gloss. So if you see me struggling picking things up, one, it's summertime here. We're right in the heart of summer. And two, it's this tile. Kind of has a texture to it, so it makes it even harder to pick things up. Okay, but I do need to get it off right now. It's okay if you distort it a little bit. We're going to mess with this in a second. Okay. Brush your sides just to get all these scraggly pieces. And then what we're going to do is we're going to lay them one on top of another. Okay, now first thing you need to do, let me clean up all these little pieces, is you need to figure out if one back is stickier than the other. So I need to cut a slice out of this as well. Maybe something like that. And I'll move this one too. I don't want these scraggly bits sticking to the other one. Okay, so the next thing, like I said, you need to figure out, you need to feel your back and feel if one's stickier than the other. I think that one's stickier, so I'm going to lay the non-sticky one on the bottom, and this one will go on top of it. Now, before we cut, because this is going to go quick, because once you lay them on, you don't want to begin to bonding together. Now, you need to decide where you want to have your seam, or where you want to cut. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. When you're doing two-sided pendants, you do not want to have your seam, like here's the hole, you don't want to have your seam where you're going to drill your hole. You're more apt of splitting those two sheets apart because we're not backing them, or I'm not backing them. If you're backing them, that would help, but it could still crack right down that seam. So have it off center. Doesn't matter where off center, just have it off center, so that way when you drill your hole at the top, you don't risk separating your two veneers, or having it crack right down those two veneers, okay? So kind of have it planned out a little bit before, you know, look at it and take a peek at it and see what you want to do. I'm going to do something like that, because in this pendant, I don't like doing the half, like the bottom top in half. I like doing the right and left halves. So, ready? We're going to lay it on. I'm going to cut and pull them off as quickly as I possibly can. And then I'm going to have a tile ready that I'm going to bake on. So you want to get your cut pieces onto the tile you're going to bake on, so you don't, or onto whatever you're going to bake on, so when we finalize our shape, we don't have to move it again. So I'm going to lay this, and you don't want to push them down, you just want to gently lay them on so they're pretty close. And then decide on your cut. You can use like a round cookie cutter to cut out a part, and then pull it off. Get it off quick. And it's summertime, so they do stick more than they do in the winter time. And again, it's okay if you distort it. Some of that pulled off, that one. That's okay. Okay. So, now that we have two pieces, let me grab another tile. I'll do one on each tile. Let's take this piece here. Now you can take your cutter and, you know, see where that sits and get one half of it in the right shape. Now it needs to go up a little bit. Similar to that. Yep, okay. And then that's got a little of the backing clay on the top here. That's okay. I'll fix that in a sec again. So then we're just going to lay this one up beside it. And that's why I was trying to check and see if they were similar thickness, because it's ideal if you can have them roughly the same thickness. And there's a little of the back side on this, so I'm going to see if I can either slice it off. If I can't, then I can take some 99% alcohol, and that will take it off, or our sanding at the end will take it off as well. I need to get these a little closer together though. I really want them butted up against each other. Okay, and then we'll smooth that in a second. So do you see what I mean? The backing stuck a little bit here and a little bit here. And then I have all these little hairs. That's okay. Again, when we sand, those hairs are just in the outer surface. So when we sand, that will come off. And this one's a little thicker than that one, so I can actually gently, because I don't want to slice through my translucent cane, Slice like that. Okay. Now that we're done that part, we're going to burnish these two together. So again, with your paper. Now you want to try to keep the line from getting super crazy wobbly if you can help it. So push kind of more straight down, maybe a little over if they're not super close to each other. Try to push them together because you want them to seam together. You want this to be one piece, not a couple pieces. So begin, then once you got it, you kind of start burnishing over it. And again, don't worry about your shape too much because we're going to fix our shape in a minute. So see the seams now closed. And now all I do is take my roller and very gently again from many directions. That's what's nice about having it on a small tile. You can kind of rotate. Try not to go off your edges, so go close or slow when you get close to your edges. You don't want to roll off. Putting pressure and rolling off at least. Let me see if it's stretched enough to refit my cutter. Yeah, that should be plenty. So if you don't like little hairs, let me grab something here. You can take a paper towel, a baby wipe, anything you got, and spray some 99% alcohol onto your wipe or whatever. No, that's too fuzzy. I took like a makeup sponge and it's too fuzzy. Let me do this. And then because it removes clay, it'll actually remove some things from the top. So if you get some of your clay from that other, the backing piece from this side when you laid it on top on it, that will take it off. It'll also take some of these hairs off because it's actually removing the top layer of clay. So it's going to smear it some. But again, when we sand everything, that top layer is going to get corrected. Just like that. And there's smears in it right now, but I'm totally fine with that. I don't know what this little black piece is, but it's down in there, so I'm going to leave it. So that one's done. And then the next one, you do the same thing. You just set it together and then burnish the same way I just did. So I'm going to do that. And then I'll be back when I'm done doing that. Now, this is Fimo. This one has Kato because it was scrap clay. It probably has Kato, Primo, Fimo, Souffle in it. It probably has a mix of all of those in it. So I find I don't have a problem baking my clays, mixing clays. Now, I usually bake at 275. Except for when I'm using Cernit, because I think Cernit's baking temperature is 230 degrees Fahrenheit. And now I don't know the conversion if you're Celsius. I don't know the conversion of 275. But, just Google it. Anyway, so the only time I bring it down is when I'm using Cernit, because the Cernit's, and I'd rather not burn the Cernit. When I bake at 275, with all the other clays, I bake at 275. No matter what, I just leave, that's what I leave my oven, my countertop oven at, and I bake it for an hour. The 30 minutes that, if you're new to polymer clay, they say 30 minutes a lot of times. The 30 minutes is too short. If you look at, go to like Polymer Clay Tutor, she has a video of testing different baking times on different clays, and an hour definitely seems to be better. It seems to make it stronger. So I always bake, unless I'm doing multiple bakes. In some projects you have to bake one part once, one part again, another part again. I tend to bake for a full hour at 275, and that's what I will do with this. I will bake it 275 for an hour. So I'm just burnishing this one up, and I'm also stretching it a little bit, just so that way I can cut another piece out of it and fix my shape. This translucent side was just slightly thicker, so I'm pulling it away from the middle a little bit. Good, there we go. So just, I'm hardly putting any pressure when I am doing these. And again, this is on my tile I'm going to bake on. When I get to refining my shape, I always go on the tile I'm going to bake on, because that way I don't have to move it again. So there we go there. Let me see if I have enough. Well, let me do a little bit of alcohol again. A couple bigger hairs there. Any little ones I'm not really concerned about, because again, I can take that off sanding. See, it's actually removing clay. And if you do this too much, it will begin to cure the outer layer. It'll suck the moisture out of, so your outer layer, almost like when you take an embossing gun or a heat gun to it and it cures the top layer to get a crackle, that's what this will do. So you don't want to do it too much, unless you want that effect, that crackly effect. So let me see if this is big enough to get a nice cut out of it. It's a little shy there, a little shy there. So I'm going to take my parchment. I'm just seeing if it's dry again. Yep. And I'm going to stretch it a little that way. I'm going to stretch it up a little bit. It was just a hair, so. This is a nice faint pattern. I really like that. Okay, gotta go up just a hair more. There was a little black clay from my on my parchment paper, but again, I don't over worry myself about any of that. I'll clean it up later. And then just recut your shape out. Here. This is just refining our shape. I usually try to pull off any of the excess right now before I remove my cutter. I'm just sticking my scraps on the side. And there's our design. I think that looks better. I'm happier with this design. So I'll probably post this tutorial. A lot of them I don't practice, but that cutter has a seam, so I was just slicing it off. So like I was doing this one and I was just winging it, and then I was like, God, I really don't think they match. The two designs, I think these are too bold for this delicate, and I think this side's now more delicate for that. And so the other one we have to cut our shape out of, and then I'll get them in the oven. So I'm going to recut my shape. On this one too. And I'll pull off my excess. I'll put the one with the translucent ones. And I've showed you on other tutorials how I usually sign. In this case, where I don't want to move them again, I would just take my Dremel with a little round bit on it and I would grind my name into it, or even scrape a KG into it. If I was going to sell it, like if someone was like, oh, I like that, and I was going to sell it, that's what I would do before I sold it. But because most of the time I just make for my personal use, I am okay with not having it on there. So those are the two pendants. I think they're really pretty. So let me pause this. I'll go up and bake them, and then I'll show you when I'm done. Done yet, and I'm going to make this one on my own with another one of those bargellos. Or advanced bargellos is what I'm calling them. But I do want to say something before I forget. Now, if you do not like a shiny back, then when you put it on your tile, before you cut it for the last time and you're putting it on your smaller tile that I said you're going to bake in, put some parchment or paper down there. I don't mind a shiny back because I plan on sanding the backs and then buffing them. So I've already sanded this back. You can't really, it's not shiny. This one I haven't. So you get the shiny back. If that really bothers you, put it on some parchment. The other thing is, tint it, tint it, tint it. Especially with light colors and translucent. They will tend to scorch or yellow. I always tint on top of my little oven there. I have a piece of parchment that I've been using for quite a few weeks. It's non-wax parchment. You could use regular printing paper. I do not use tin foil because tin foil, some people use tin foil. I don't use tin foil because tin foil conducts heat. And I just want something that doesn't conduct heat. So literally I take non-wax parchment and I just do that in the oven. I have a big sheet. I put all of them in. I just lay that on top and then that goes on top of my little countertop convection oven. And I just keep reusing the same piece until it starts to get a little toasty, and then I'll get a new piece and keep reusing that. But you definitely want to tent. I don't tent it where it's held up. I just tent it so it's flat, just to kind of protect. Don't use wax parchment though, because the wax will melt. So you want to use like non-wax parchment. I don't know about construction paper, but maybe a white construction paper, a plain printing paper, anything like that, just to protect it. Especially in this kind of project, because you will scorch your translucent, you'll scorch your white. Any of the really light colors tend to scorch easier, I find. Your dark colors, even if they scorch, they don't really show. But just get in the habit of putting parchment over it. So I wanted to say that before I forgot, because when those come out in an hour, I'd probably forget. I'm going to eat a yogurt. Boop, yogurt. And then I'm going to make this one and get that in the oven too, and then we'll be back. Okay, so we're back now, and they're out of the oven and cooled. So here's that little one, and here are these two. What's funny is I was working with alcohol inks this morning, and look, somehow, it must have been a dry piece, is down in it and on top of it. And that one's more down in. I don't understand where it came from. But I'm going to see if I can sand this one off. The one that's down in, whatever, that's fine. And if that one doesn't come all the way off, either way, I'm okay with that. So we're going to sand. Here's my sanding bowl. It's just a scrap bowl I've had. Some people get a big Tupperware and they actually sand right in it. I don't tend to do that. So these are the sandpapers I'm going to use. I do prefer wet-dry sanding. If you've watched any of my tutorials, I've said why, but I'll say it again. So you can sand dry. If you're going to sand with sandpaper dry or polishing papers, you do want to wear a mask because polymer clay is essentially plastic and you don't want to be breathing in its dust. So sanding wet will prevent that. 2, sanding wet will keep your grit inside your sandpaper from getting clogged. If you sand wet, it kind of keeps it moving and you don't go through as much sandpaper. So I'm going to use, these are my grits I'm going to use. I do use a Dremel after to buff that you've probably seen in other tutorials. It makes it so I don't have to sand so high. If I were to sand from 400 to 10,000, I still wouldn't get as nice of a shine. If I just sand up to 2,500 and then buff it with my Dremel, I get a much higher shine. So the grits I'm going to use, 400, 600, 800, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500. I'm going to do each one of these, and then I'm going to buff with my Dremel. So pretty much I just dip it in my bowl of water, get it wet. I'm going to dip my pendant in the bowl of water, get that as wet as well. And usually I'll sand with it flat for a minute. And now I'm pressing more on the top, so the top's getting more pressure than the bottom. So what I do, like this end of the pendant, is I rotate it, and then I'll put a little more pressure there. Same with, I'll grip more in the middle and put a little more pressure in the middle. Because you can't hold it completely evenly because you can't really move it when you're doing that. So kind of flip it around in your hand to make sure you're getting the whole thing sanded. You also, if you want to even off the back, sand the back as well. And I do tend to sand, I don't do all the grits on the back, but I do tend to sand the back as well. So you're going to go through each one of your grits. And I don't worry about the sides, even though there's these little ridge. I'll take care of that with my Dremel. So I'm going to see if I can get that little pink guy out of there. We'll see. A lot of times I'll sand flat, and then I'll go through like this and do it like this. I tend to spend a lot of time on my 400 because that gets off the bulk of any little things, like black pieces, stuff like that, little pieces of lint, dust. You know where all that lint was coming from? My parchment paper. Because I have it on top of my stand, it had stuck to the piece of parchment that was sticking out of the box. So I'm going to go through and sand these. And then I will be back when this is done. Completely. So I'll do each one in the 400 is how I tend to do it. And then I'll do each one in the 600, each one in the 800. I don't do one completely. I do all of them together. And then I move up the grit. The other thing is, you know, I have a rag here, and I mentioned it in the tutorial I was going to do, but I deleted it, so I didn't tell you guys. I have a rag here, and if you want to keep your sheets from rolling up, the best thing to do when you're done with it, dip it in your bowl, rinse it off, and then dry it off in your towel, your rag, and then lay it flat, and that will help keep it curling up. If you leave it completely wet, this thing's going to curl right up on itself, and it makes it more difficult to use in the future. So that's just something I'm just throwing out there to keep them flat. Like, I've used these a bunch and they're still really flat. That's the best way I've found to keep them, because if I was just to set this on the side, and maybe I will set one on the side so you can see what it does, but it curls right up into a ball or a little spiral. That one's actually about good. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing that, and I'll be back when I'm done. So they're all sanded, and one I already buffed, and I'll show you that. So, sorry, I got sandy on my hand. I did end up getting the pink out of this one up here, most of it. There's still a hint there. So this one's sanded and buffed, and this one is just sanded to 2500. So you can see the amount of shine that my Dremel can give it just sanding up 2500. And I've also done the edges on that other one that I've buffed, so I got rid of all this little scraggly stuff. And here's this one as well that I sanded and buffed. It has some weird grooves in it, but if I was to apply resin to that, that would look fine. You wouldn't be able to tell that fill in that little indent. Okay, so we need to buff this one. And in my how I polish polymer clay with a Dremel video, I have a link to the polishing wheels I use. I've said this in other videos, but I use a Dremel 4000. I got it on Amazon. It is reconditioned by Dremel themselves. I've had it for about 3 years. I don't know how long reconditioned ones last. I've had this one about 3 years, which is great. I really don't think I paid more than $100 for it. So, and it might have been less than that. So I'm happy with this purchase because I have used this for mosaics, for like that glass work. I've used it for all kinds of things. It's not even funny. All kinds of things. Drilling holes in plastic, grinding off metal. I've used it for all kinds of stuff. Mixed media arts. So the first one I'm going to use, and again the link is in that video. I got them off Amazon. They come with a bunch of both different types. This orange one's a little more coarse, so I start with this one. On my machine, you have a lock button here, and that's what opens and closes this chuck. So if you unscrew it, the chuck can come out. If you hold the lock button down and screw it in, the chuck gets locked in, and then let go and pull up, make sure it's locked. When I polish, I usually polish around speed 15. The Dremel 4000 has different speeds all the way up to 5 to 35. So, which is nice. It's not just high, low, high, medium, low. I generally polish around speed 15. Now, when I'm trimming the sides, I'm just going to say this now, I'm going to be choked up on the top, okay? So I have control, and I'm going to put my thumb here, and I'm going to grind towards myself, okay? And that way you have more control because you're choked way up. When I'm buffing, then I'll move down to the bottom and just kind of buff. But because this can remove at a higher speed, and with putting some pressure, you can actually remove some of this here, this kind of little stuff, which I like. So, you know, if you don't want to remove anything, you want to be sure when you're new at it, you're sure you're not removing anything, put it at a lower speed, less pressure. Less pressure is best. If you go too much, you could gouge right through that, potentially. So, just be careful. But it's not that fast. So, you'll figure it out. It's pretty easy. So when I turn it on, this is going to be loud. If you want to turn your volume down, I'll give you a second to do that. If you mute it, I'll give you a thumbs up when I'm done and about to start talking. Okay? Now, for those of you who are still listening, this is really awkward to do it over my desk because it's kind of long. I usually do it in my lap. Just checking my shape. Okay. You already see that one spot. Dropped it. Sorry, flung it out of my hand. Yeah, I did already do that one. Okay. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Volume up. Okay, so now we're done. This is the one I just did here. And, you know, there are a few indents in the clay itself, but I'm okay with that because I'm going to resin this. But, God, if you weren't going to resin that, you imagine trying to get that kind of shine by hand. I honestly don't even think that's possible. So, my backs, you could add a backing on these. I would have done it before I buffed at least. Or you could do it now. If you put it in the oven now, you'll have to just quickly buff it up again, usually. But I'm okay with this back. Again, this is more for personal use, so I'm okay with the backs looking like this. I mean, they're not perfect. They got some little indents, but I'm totally fine with that. I've never had someone go, "Oh God, your back is ugly." Never, not once. I really like this technique, so check that other video out. It's like an ombre. This is a 4-color Skinner blend, so if I would have just done 2 colors, you get a nice ombre with it. Maybe someday I'll do that. So next, what I would do, I have that other shape in the oven. I'll sand those, buff those, and then I will resin these. I'm not going to show the resining on camera because I have a video for that, how I resin polymer clay. And I also have a video on my common mistakes and how to try to fix them. So I'll probably resin these tomorrow, and then I will drill a hole and put a bail in. I'll be back when I do that, and I'll show you how they look when they're done. But I think I think the lace looks better with the light color than with these darker ones. Yeah, this is the alcohol ink one I was messing with earlier. But again, I really like to sand my stuff before I resin it. So anyways, I'll be back when I'm done resining, and I'll show you how they look, and I'll show you how to drill a hole and apply your bail. Okay, so now a couple are done. This one I'm going to do one more coat of resin to get it a little more domed, but these 2 are completely done. I did one of each shape here. I really like this one because it gives it a nice ombre effect. It's kind of cool right there. I really like that. Anyway, so these are the 2 I'm going to show you show you one how to drill. And then just like I made this scrap clay bead that I showed you, I made just some round ones. And what's funny is a lot of you have probably seen this, but I see a sailboat on this one. Isn't that weird? That I just rolled the clay and I ended up getting a sailboat. So these you can use as like accent beads or whatever. But I rolled them and I'll save them for the future. So with this, drilling the hole, I use a hand drill. The end rotates so that way you can put it in your palm and just spin this part and you don't have to twist your whole hand. I got this one off of Amazon. It was fairly cheap. I always start out with my smallest one and work my way up because I have had before a piece crack. More when I'm putting the border on. It's more like the border will crack than anything else. That's a few times, and that was in the beginning when I was trying with a larger bit. So I always start out with a small one. When you open and unscrew this, this gets wider, and when you screw it in, it gets smaller. So depending on what size bit you're using will depend on how much you need to twist that. And basically the simple thing is just drill a hole. And surprisingly, polymer clay is fairly easy to drill through. So usually I'll set it down in the beginning so I can see. And sometimes if you have a pattern, it may be easier to see your design to see your spot on the back. I don't usually go up to the edge, but I don't go crazy far from the edge either. So I'm gonna just make a little indent and then check it, make sure I'm in the center there. Yep, I'm happy with that. So then I'll drill a little bit from one side, so just put it down, and no, you can't see that. Let me see if I can do it so you can see it. Simply drill, and I'll drill up until I can see it coming, not coming through on the front, but you can see it through the resin there, right there. And then I'll put my bit right on that little hole on the front side. And the resin out of everything is the hardest thing to drill through. And now I'm through. Just like that with my smallest hole. and I'll go up through each size until I think it's big enough for my jump ring. And depending on the thickness of your pendant will depend how large, like 6mm, 7mm, 8mm you'll need, how large of a loop jump ring you'll need. So these are fairly thin, so I probably won't need a crazy big jump ring. I'll probably use just a 7mm. I have 6mm, but they're a lot fatter. They're a lot bigger in gauge. So I should order some 6mm that are a thinner gauge. So once you have your first hole, it's really easy to refine it and get your hole even bigger. Maybe I'll go up one more size just to give my jump ring room to move. And don't force it, just let it go. And I am using strong clay. Like Sculpey 3 used to break all the time on me when I didn't know any better of the strengths of clay. So because this is Primo and Fimo and all the nice clays, the nice strong clays, I don't worry as much about it breaking. So I got all of these off of Amazon. Let me see if that hole is big enough for the 6mm ones. So this is a jump ring, and I'm just going to use silver on this. I tend to like silver better, so I tend to go with silver. And you open your jump ring by twisting it front to back, never pulling it apart. And I'm just using, I love these pliers. These are my favorite. I actually ordered two because I got one at a store. It's Beadalons. I think they're bent nose pliers, I think is the exact name of them. They're like $8 on Amazon. I love them. I got one at the art store. They're just like perfect for my little hand size. I love the bent nose. And ideally with a bent nose, so let me show you this. So to keep your jump ring from distorting, right? Your goal is to not twist it too much. Now, you want to have as much of the plier touching your jump ring as possible, okay? So I see my opening is up here. Now, a lot of people would think to grab it like this with the tiny little parts. That's actually more of an incorrect way, I guess. I mean, you can do it that way, but what I've learned from other beading tutorials and chainmail and stuff is you should actually grab it like this. So most of your jump plier is touching your jump ring. And like I said, I have two pairs when I make bracelets and stuff, and then you twist like that and then close it back up. So if you hold it like that, which is why I have two. So then there's that on there, and then I need to grab my bales. And a lot of these I've ordered off of Amazon. I've ordered them off of eBay. Different ones. I have different ones. I started off using these type where I'd stick it in between the front and the back of the veneer. And that's what I did with this one. So with this pendant here, I did this bargello technique. You can see it's a thick pendant, so I had a front veneer and then I had a back veneer, and I stuck it in there. And then I realized, oh, I can just drill through polymer clay. So that's where now I have just regular jump rings. And this is kind of a fat pendant, so I think I might go with something like that. So you put your jump ring through and then just slide your bail on. And I do like silver, so I have way more silver than I have any other color, and that's just me. You grab it with one, and you could do it with your fingers, it's just easier with a plier, and then twist closed. Good. And there you go. You could put it on a cord now, you could put it on whatever you want. A braided piece of cord, or sari ribbon, whatever you want. I just tend to wear these myself, so I have them on a pre-made rubber cord. That's what I wear all my pendants on because I can just change it every single day. I got that one from, and I'm going to draw a blank on the name. Samantha uses them a lot. And they have tutorials, and they sell a lot of beads and stuff. And I know the name right on the tip of my tongue, but I can't say it. I can't figure it out. You guys will know what I'm talking about. You order beads and clay and all kinds of things from them. And if I think of it, I'll post it later. So pretty much this tutorial is done, and I hope it was very helpful for you guys. This one still has to be resined. If it was helpful for you, it would probably be helpful for someone else. So as I always say, please like, share with any of your other groups. Any comments you have, please write them down below. Always be respectful. Other than that, this was a fun one. I think it's very cute, and I will see you guys next time. Oh, also, I have a new Facebook page, and that way I can see if you use any of my techniques, because you can't really post any techniques to YouTube or pictures. So if you want to share any projects you made with these techniques, please share on my Facebook page. It's Katie's Polymer Clay Friends on Facebook. And I will see you guys with the next project. Bye. Thought about it. Fire Mountain Gems. I get the pre-made rubber silicone cords. I love them. Wear them all the time. They're really comfortable. Whenever I've sold them, I've just put them on that. And I told people they could put them on a silver chain if they have, or whatever kind of chain, but that way it's cheap and easy. You could also buy like leather cords from Amazon, pre-made leather cords, just simple cords. And they come with a clasp. I mean, they're not fancy or anything, but it's just a black leather cord that you can hang one on. So, I wanted to tell you that. Okay, now, goodbye.